So hi folks, it's been a little over a year since the last time we talked, and just as a heads up, this setup is going to be kind of weird. I wrote a script, which I'm looking at, but I'm not going to be reading directly from, so there might be like gaps. There'll be gaps that I notice in things that I want to say, that I'm not going to say, because I'm only using the script as a reference point. I'm probably just gonna put this script up somewhere else, so if anyone wants to read the full thing, and whatever I end up skipping over, because I will end up skipping over things, this is like the 5th or 6th take I've tried, that'll be up somewhere to read. But hi, it's been a little over a year since the last time you've seen me on camera, though if you watch my Twitch streams, sometimes I'm on camera there too. And the last time you probably saw me talk to the camera like this, I was telling you that I was about to move because I used to live in my brother's spare bedroom after my mom died. And I was going to move back to Colorado. I was becoming a roommate. I was going to rent a room with my cousin. And she was a very old friend of mine. We've been friends basically our entire lives. It would be a good chance to catch up with her. It was going to be a bigger room. It is a bigger room. I mean, you can kind of tell it's a little blurry, it's a little out of focus, but I'm here. I've been here for the last year. This is probably the biggest room I've had since I was a kid. It looks cluttered, it looks cramped. You'll notice that there's still, you can't tell over here. I have cardboard boxes surrounding me. That's because even though my brother's spare bedroom was tiny, and I like to joke that I was kind of crammed in there like a sardine can, even though it didn't seem like I had that much stuff, I had more in his storage shed than I thought. Like, to my mind, he has 2 storage sheds, and I took up one wall of one storage shed. And I thought, oh, that's not very many boxes. And then when we moved me out of there, it was like an entire moving truck. So even though this room, even though this room is pretty big, all that stuff from the moving truck has to fit in here with me. And I've been getting rid of stuff, I've been sorting through things, and I just haven't gotten around to doing it all yet. To some degree, like, I've always been kind of a cluttered guy. I kind of find clutter to be a little bit cozy. And it's not like I'm a hoarder or anything. I still have a lot of space in here. It just doesn't look super pretty. But that doesn't bother me. And maybe it bothers you. I don't know. But I've been here a whole year, so how are things with me? And the answer is, it's complicated. Obviously, if you've been checking up on my community posts, I've been having to raise money for things. We're gonna get into some of this. Some of it is going to enter the bummer zone. Unfortunately, it has to. But we will also be talking about future things coming to the YouTube channel. I've been saying this for years now. I'm not giving this up. This is fun. I like making videos. You saw this, right? YouTube sent me this fun clapper. 'Cause, I don't know, they just did. It's part of that's partner rewards. We're not going to get into that now. But, like, in truth, being here isn't so bad. I've been making it work with a lot of help from friends and people like you. Things could be better, but it's mostly just really easy to get into a spiral and start feeling really, really bad about just things like not being able to find a job, right? To take it from the top, so I got here basically like the last week of October. I taking some time to get situated, dragging my feet on certain things. I started applying for jobs probably like the last week of November. So we'll say like the start of December, maybe mid-December. I don't know. This was a year ago. But from December to March 2025, I applied to a little over 100 jobs. And only 3 of them scheduled me for an interview. Now, to me, that feels really disheartening. But I've been told by others that, like, it's pretty normal, like, not to really stress about it very much. But I have been stressing about it a lot. And, like, the thing was, I got those 3 interviews, and only 2 of them were real. Sorry. Only 1 of them was real, 2 of them were fake. All 3 were scheduled by an AI bot. And for 2 of them, when I went in for my interview, because they were scheduled by an AI bot, the boss there looks at me and is like, "We didn't schedule for you for an interview. This job isn't open. You know, everyone has wasted their time," essentially. And then the other one, the 3rd interview, they never called me back. So, you know, across almost 4 months, I only had one real interview for a job out of 100 plus applications, right? There was one other one that took me. There was one other interview I had. And it got far enough to where it was technically, I was supposed to have an interview for this job, but it turned out to be orientation for the job, which, warning sign number 1, they skipped the interview and you're just hired. It was for a travel agency. And some of you out there, you might be feeling a cold pit in your stomach over this, because it turned out to be an MLM scam. So I kind of had a feeling that it was going to be an MLM scam from the start, because I talked to friends and they're like, "Yeah, that sounds pretty suspicious." So the night before, I stayed up really, really late, and I created what I called an ejector seat. And what this generally means is that, so you see me, I'm talking to you here now, like I am. I'm sitting here in my shirt, you can see my background. OBS has this feature called virtual camera, where you feed it like what you're seeing here. It goes through OBS, and then OBS spits it out to, it looks like a webcam, right? So that means what I could do is I could record a special second video of an event, let's say, that I tie to a hotkey on my keyboard. So the idea was that if it became very obvious that this was an MLM scam, which stands for multi-level marketing, it's basically a pyramid scheme. If it became apparent that's what was going on, I could push this hotkey, trigger the quote-unquote ejector seat, and a new video would play in my place, and everyone on the call would see it. Now, it takes a lot of guts to do something like that. You gotta be real confident in yourself. And I'm not. So I never ended up pushing it. Even though it did become very obvious I was looking at an MLM scam. If you want to see the video, you can watch it right here. I do warn that, like, if you have sensitivity to flashing lights, you might want to look away for the next 10 seconds, okay? So, here we go. This is my ejector seat video that I was going to play on the Zoom call. In 3, 2, 1... So you can imagine, I'm sitting there on a Zoom call, right? The manager or whoever it is talking to all of us, and I'd hit the key, and everyone in the call would see me get struck by lightning. And I would just be a smoldering corpse for the rest of the video. But like I said, I didn't have the balls to do that. Anyway, so things were pretty bad. You know, I applied to Taco Bell, Burger King, McDonald's, Subway, Petco, Dollar Tree, Walmart, our local Kroger branch, which is called King Soopers. I applied to Goodwill, to Arc Thrift Store. I applied to Blackjack Pizza, 7-Eleven. We have a lot of local restaurants around here. I applied to 3 or 4 of those. And basically got nothing. So, getting into, we'll say, the last week of February, we have a state program here called Workforce. I don't know if this is like nationwide. It's something we have here in Colorado. I've heard it might be other places too. I don't know. I've only ever lived, been conscious of living in 2 states in my entire life, which is Nevada and Colorado. And Nevada health programs are terrible. Nobody over there picks up a phone. Nobody over there answers a phone call. You might as well be working with ghosts if you're in Nevada. Out here in Colorado, though, it's been surprisingly easy to get into programs like this. So I started getting in contact with Colorado Workforce, the county workforce specifically, around the end of February. And they, like, the very first thing they did, they took my resume and they fed it through ChatGPT, which was like, thanks for that, right? But what ultimately ended up happening through that, like, when they fed it through ChatGPT, like, their advice to me was just like, just keep going, just keep applying to jobs, and that's what carried me through to March. And they were like, if you can't find a job, come back and we'll, like, enroll you in the specific workforce program, because they have, like, a lot of different services. They have resume assistance, they have all kinds of stuff. But there's, like, a specific workforce program that they put you through. And when you sign up for that, that means that, like, they determine what you need to get a job. In my case, they offered to send me back to school. So I figured, okay, I'll go back to school, I'll get job training, this will all work out. They'll pay for it, and they gave me a budget of around, I think, like $2,000, and said, here's a list of schools, here's a list of programs they have, pick one. And for many, many years, I mean, you know me, I like to make games, I like to tinker around with software and things like that. I'm pretty smart in that regard, usually. And I've had friends for years tell me that I need to look into learning Python programming. And so, there was a Python course on this list, and I figured, okay, we'll do Python. And it was also pretty cheap. I think it was like $800. So, it would have been under budget. And the thing is, like, when you're under budget like that, the overage you get is rent assistance while you learn the course. So this would have been, I would have had $1,600 to help pay for my rent while I did school. And a couple weeks later, maybe a month later, my workforce agent calls me back and he was like, okay, well, I've done some independent research of my own, and the Python isn't really hiring in your area. Like, okay. And he was like, how about Java? And he sent me a link to a different school with a Java backend. It's called a programming boot camp, which is basically, a crash course in learning Java, learning all this other stuff in service of learning backend programming, which is, it's database stuff. It's the stuff under the hood that a website runs on, right? It's API calls and all that fun stuff. So I figured, okay, fine. Turns out, after I've signed up for this course, the Java backend programming course is very expensive. It takes up almost the entire $2,000 budget, which is a problem for me. So to get back to workforce, this Java backend programming bootcamp, it was just a chance for me to expand my horizons, to learn something new, to finally learn real programming, because that's something I've always wanted to do, but struggled with my entire life. I have tried to teach, because it's a big, long story. We're not going to get into it now. When I first got into game development, I basically taught myself how to program, like, in one of the most roundabout ways possible. And I needed, like, a real programming course to, like, properly understand how programming works, and I never had that. So, this Java backend programming bootcamp was a chance for me to finally learn how to program for real. Workforce also told me about another state program called DVR, which stands for the Department of Vocational Rehab, because ever since I've been in, like, elementary school, I've had, like, teachers and stuff tell me that I probably have ADHD, and they tried for many, many years to convince my mom that I have ADHD. And, you know, since as I've grown up, as I've become an adult, and I've looked at myself in the mirror, I've realized that I do have quite a few symptoms of ADHD. I have weird memory problems sometimes. I get distracted easily. I have trouble staying focused on tasks. You know, it's been like steadily getting worse as I get older. And DVR is a program that would do all kinds of things. And the primary thing, according to Workforce, is they would prove that I have debilitating ADHD, and they would put me on like a disability program for it. And they would have other things too. They'd have job coaches and all this other stuff, mental health resources, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these things to help me deal with my ADHD, right? So DVR puts me in contact with a neurologist, and he's one of the best in my area. And I go up to his office, and like the test he puts me through is like an all-day thing. It's like 8 hours long. It is ridiculous. They test me on like IQ tests, concentration tests, memory tests, logic tests, dexterity tests, emotional evaluation, schizophrenia evaluation. It is incredibly exhaustive. And if you want to know more about the kind of tests it put me through, I'll put a link down in the description with a lot of other things. I did actually end up writing a couple of blogs about this. So if you really want to know, like, in depth what the neurologist was for me, the kinds of tests he put me through, and the ultimate evaluation, I mean, we'll be going through some of the evaluation here, but if you want to just know more, there will be links down in the description. And then there was another meeting we did, I don't know, like 2 or 3, maybe even like a month later, where we sat in on a Zoom call and he gave me my results. And at the end of it all, my diagnosis is that I don't actually have ADHD. Like, it was actually like really genuinely kind of shocking to me. Probably anyway, like he was pretty clear that like I could still have it. ADHD is kind of a weird sort of malady. I don't know. But it's just a weird thing where like sometimes it's kind of hard to define. But he said he has several tests that are specifically like when he puts people through his tests, he's not often wrong, basically, is what he said. And the fact that I did not clock any of the normal ADHD problems means I probably don't have it. Instead, what is causing the ADHD symptoms, and this is something that is brand new to me, I didn't even know this was possible, but something else that can cause ADHD symptoms is trauma, lifelong trauma. He diagnosed me with a specific brand of PTSD called complex PTSD or complex trauma. And basically what that means is that I've gone through a lot of traumatic events in my life over a very long period of time, and it's kind of warped my brain in certain ways. And when it does that, it can manifest symptoms almost identical to ADHD. He specifically told me that, like, because my symptoms are slowly getting worse, that's another big signal that it's not ADHD. Because ADHD does not get worse as you get older. But this trauma, this PTSD, that does. So, Ryan here again, and I'm recording this very late at night, so I'm kind of whispering. I'm pausing myself here because in all of my rambling and getting numbers slightly wrong in this video, this is one of those things that really started to get away from me. To keep this short, I just want to clarify that, like, the reason PTSD does this is that it's kind of like our brains trying to protect us from experiencing more trauma. There's this idea that PTSD is like the movie Rambo. People having war flashbacks and not being able to discern memories from reality.
This mission is over, Rambo. Do you understand me? This mission is over! It's over!
Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!
Don't end it like this.
Back there I can fly a gunship. I can drive a tank. I was in charge of $1 million equipment! Back here I can't even hold a job! Fucking cars! Ah!
That's just Hollywood, a form of movie magic. At least for me, it just means that I'm very anxious and pretty scatterbrained sometimes. I like to keep to myself. I really wish I would have just stuck to reading the script as it was written. This whole thing would have probably been like half the length if I did. Okay, I'm unpausing now. We're going back to the video. And the reason for that trauma, and this is something I think I've talked about before, but again, you know, I can sometimes have memory problems, so I don't remember how much of it I've told before. But for those of you who don't know, well, okay, this is the bummer zone. I'm gonna preface this first. We're entering the bummer zone. I will put a time code down here. If you don't want to hear bummer zone stuff, you can skip it. We can just go right to what's coming up on the channel, or whatever else I have planned in this video that I'm going to ramble through. But this is something I have to say. And this is part of releasing myself from this trauma, is telling people about it. Because the other thing the neurologist told me is that bottling everything up for so many years, because I never told anyone about a lot of this, bottling it up for so long is part of what caused my PTSD. So I have to tell people about it now because it releases me from the pain, right? Okay, so that out of the way, let's get back to where I was. For those of you who don't know, I lived with my mom for 38 years, literally until I was supposed to be an adult. And that's because when I was maybe 12 years old, I had something deeply traumatic happen to me. And it was something that was ongoing. It lasted for 4 or 5 years, and probably even longer, honestly. The fallout from this trauma continued to haunt me for a very, very long time. Now, I can't go into exact details about what this traumatic event was, because if I do, YouTube might actually block this video. But needless to say, I knew kids when I was in school, we'll say middle school, up to the start of high school, to me, these kids were my best friends. We were in class all day together. We would hang out during recess. We would walk home from school together. We spent weekends together. We hung out at each other's houses. You know, we were friends. Except these kids were not my friends. They treated me more like bullies would. They beat up on me. They would lie to me just to see if I would believe it. When they would come over to my house, they would break stuff on purpose just because they thought it was funny to wreck my stuff. I would show them drawings I had made. And I'd be like, this is my favorite drawing that I've ever made. And I would leave the room, go to the bathroom, I'd come back, and the drawing would be ripped up. Be like, oh, I don't know what happened. It just got ripped up. Like, and this happened over and over and over and over. They abused me mentally, they abused me emotionally, and they abused me in other ways. And I was just this dumb kid. I didn't really understand. You know, when you're in school, you get like, again, you know, I've been out of school for a while. I'm an adult. I am 40. I'm a little over 40. So it's been a while since I've been in school. And at least when I was in school, you know, they would show you PSAs, which, you know, this was this was long enough ago. It was still film strips for me. That's how old this all was. And these PSAs would tell you what to do, like if a family member abused you, or like if another teacher abused you, but they never really covered what to do if it's your own friends. And it was very confusing to me. I knew I didn't like it, I knew I didn't want it, but it never mattered what I wanted. I was just like a toy for these guys to play with, to beat up on or lie to or whatever. And I just felt like it was like I was this loyal little puppy that just always kept coming back for more because I didn't know any better. I saw myself as like the runt of our friend group, right? The annoying little fat kid that everyone makes fun of. You know, you think about like Chunk from the Goonies, right? Everyone's kind of like annoyed that Chunk is there, but they still let Chunk hang out with them anyway. Even though nobody really likes him.
I don't got it. You klutz.
And I figured that was just my lot in life. That I was designated to be the punching bag of the group. The one that everyone messed with and hurt. And that I deserved to be hurt. And as a result of this abuse, after 2 or 3 years of it happening, like, I started developing, like, crippling panic attacks. Like, there were some days it was hard for me to get out of bed. On better days, like, I wouldn't eat because I just felt sick all day. And, you know, I felt sick, so I wouldn't eat, which would make me feel sicker, and it kind of became this, like, horrible cycle where, I mean, you wouldn't think of it now. You can only really see me from, like, the top down. I'm a pretty hefty guy nowadays. And you wouldn't believe it, but there was a time in my life when I was, like, 15, 16, 17, where I was, like, 80 pounds. Like, I was a walking skeleton. I was skin and bones because I wouldn't eat, because I was having these incredible, destroying panic attacks. And, you know, I had moments where, like, I tried fighting back. Sometimes literally fighting with these kids with, you know, my own 2 fists. And that resulted in me almost being expelled from school. And, you know, obviously that's like a prompt to, like, explain what's going on. Explain why I'm fighting with these kids. And the teachers just didn't care. They turned their back on me. They figured I was just a dumb kid with dumb kid problems, you know? It was literally like boys will be boys. And that meant that, like, by high school, I started ditching classes, and eventually I just stopped going to school entirely. I felt like the world had turned its back on me. So, I turned my back on the world. You know, if school doesn't want to help me, if my friends aren't actually my friends, screw them, screw everything, screw everyone. Like, who cares? And my family? Like, my family, of course, like I said, I've never told anyone about this. So, my family just saw me as, like, this, you know, high school dropout loser, didn't have a job, wasn't doing anything with his life. So they basically disowned me. And it all spiraled out of control, until I just disappeared into this long, deep depression for many, 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 many years. Like 10 years, 15 years. Almost 20 years. And it was finally sometime around, 2014, 2015, that I finally started to realize, hey, this is bad. I shouldn't be like this. I need to be better. I need to, climb out of this hole. I can't just sit down here and do nothing. And that's when I got my GED. That's when I started working at the thrift store, a couple towns over, before I left Colorado for the first time. That's when it felt like I had, like, actual forward momentum in my life for the first time. And then we moved to Nevada, and Nevada's a whole shit show. I don't want to be too mean about it because I have family out there, and some of those people are pretty nice. But Nevada, where we lived in Nevada, felt like this backwater podunk town, dirt road kind of place that wasn't great. Hence, why I have PTSD. And some of it I probably did to myself. The good news is, getting diagnosed with all of this stuff is, it feels like such a breath of fresh air, right? Because I'm pretty hard on myself. But I've always been very hard on myself about how slow I am at certain things in my life. How easily I forget things. Or how so easily I get nervous in certain social situations. You wouldn't think about it. You wouldn't think that's true because I have this YouTube channel and obviously, I'm putting myself out there on the daily. But I do. I shut down. I get quiet. I'd rather not be bothered a lot of the time talking to other people. Doing YouTube is just, it's just talking to a microphone. It's completely different. It's not talking to people. It's like I'm talking to myself, right? And I'm still bad at all these things. I'm still, I'm still forgetful. I'm still slow. I'm still nervous. But now there's a reason for it. Now there's, it's not a choice I am making. It's a condition that I can separate from myself and point at. It's like, sorry about that. I don't mean to be wiping my nose like that. It's like I'm carrying these weights around, right? This mental baggage. And it's weighing me down and it's holding me back. At least when it comes to certain things, like something you might be able to do easily takes a lot more effort for me because I have to drag around, 700 pounds of PTSD with me. But that also means that I'm not lazy. I'm not stupid. In fact, my neurologist, as part of this whole massive testing process, if I remember right, he said that my reading and writing skills were in the top 96th percentile, which, if I remember right, that means that only 4% of people that have taken his test are better at me than are better at me at it. Oh. This is what happens when I talk a lot. My mustache starts tickling my nose and it drives me insane. If you've seen me rub my nose a lot during streams, that's why. It's because of this thing. And I look weird without a mustache. I have to have the mustache. I have to have the beard. I shaved totally clean once. And someone I knew made fun of me really badly. Because they said when I'm clean shaven, I look like a used car salesman. Anyway, it means that I'm pretty smart. And that's something that I'm trying to be kind to myself about now. Because I've typically not been kind to myself about this kind of stuff. And I'm starting to realize that, I'm a better person than I think I am. And now, instead of, beating up on myself and thrashing against this mental brick wall, I can finally begin to learn what works with me, what works for me, how I can deal with this 700-pound weight of PTSD I've been dragging around. And one of the other things my neurologist provided for me was this huge list of best practices, how I'm better suited to remote work, how I probably also need special accommodations due to the fact that I get emotionally tired really, really easily. It was a huge document. It was almost 30 pages in total of test results and recommendations for what I need for work. Unfortunately, it's probably going to take me most of the rest of my life to heal from this. as much as I wanted to believe that, like, in 2015 I was starting to pull myself out of this depression, I think the real healing is only just now beginning, because only now, for the first time in my entire life, 41, 42 years on this earth, only now am I starting to understand exactly what is wrong with me and how to deal with it. This is where I start healing from my trauma. And, like, even therapy will probably never cure all of my fears. That's not even, like, counting the fears that I have that is just making it difficult for me to schedule therapy. My cousin, my current roommate, has been, like, on my case pretty consistently that, like, I need to find a therapist. I need to find a therapist. I need to find a therapist. And I have someone bookmarked. I picked one out, and I just haven't sent them the email yet, because it's very difficult for me to do that. It takes a lot of courage to do that, and I need to work up to it. But that also, like, all of this reflects on the job hunt and makes everything extra difficult and extra stressful. There aren't a lot of jobs out there for even normal people right now who aren't crippled with uncontrollable anxiety and PTSD and everything that I have. And since this isn't actually ADHD, like, all the help that DVR could provide me, that vocational rehab place, is gone. They barely want to touch me. The most they are willing to offer me is, like, a bus pass discount. I still have to pay for buses myself, but they will reimburse me some amount of that cost after the fact. And, like, they're also, like, they're supposedly going to provide me with a job coach, but it's been months and months and months and months, and I haven't heard anything about that job coach. And for the record, like, the last time I went through a workforce program like this, like, back in 2015, that's how I got my GED and everything, it was all through workforce. They were giving away bus passes for free. I'd see my workforce agent once a month, and, like, I'd come home with, like, a booklet of $100 in totally free bus passes that would take me anywhere in the state. And now they'll barely even cover, like, half of a bus fare. And again, only after I spend the full amount for myself. And I haven't even really talked about school yet. That's been its own special kind of nightmare. My main problem is that it's not just going to school, it's a boot camp, like I said. Like, think about military boot camps, okay? Soldiers get put through the ringer, that's the point. It's supposed to be this very fast-paced, sort of difficult training program. But in practice, it's not necessarily that it's difficult, it's just that it feels like a little bit sloppy. So the boot camp was divided into 3 main segments. Each one was about 6 weeks long. I started in April, I was supposed to finish in September. And it started out with them teaching us the fundamentals of Java, which, I took to pretty easily. Not like super easily, we'll get to that, but I took to it easy enough. Compared to the rest of the course, Java was the easy part. We were like, for our Java final, they had us program like a card game, and that was really fun. I really liked that. The teacher gave me high marks for that. The second segment was for something called MySQL, or I guess the instructor called it MySQL. That's database management software. Now, MySQL isn't very hard on its own. If you've ever done like an advanced Google search, that's basically writing a MySQL query. And like, I'm not even joking about that. Like, all this like putting things in quotation marks and like searching specific dates and specific domains and stuff like that. That's all just, it is almost exactly a raw MySQL query. That's just how it is. Where I started to struggle was when they started teaching us how to make Java talk to MySQL and, share data back and forth. Because we had to learn something known as JDBC, Java Database something. I don't remember what the C stands for. It's probably connection, actually. Java database connection. That means writing like a connection manager in the code, which in itself is this nightmare because you have to do all these nested blocks of like try and catch, and it sucks to read, it sucks to write. The third segment was learning about API development. That means using Java and MySQL to talk to a website and to get data out of the website using MySQL, using JDBC. And actually, like, part of the reason why it was so sloppy is they taught us all this JDBC stuff, and then we get to API development, and they're like, no more JDBC. We're going to use something called Arc, we're going to use something called REST, and it will automate everything. Then why did you teach me JDBC? And like the real heart of this problem of all three of these segments was the speed at which the course moved. More specifically, how things were taught to me and how things weren't taught to me. A big component of this whole class, something they told us and taught us very early on, was how to research. And what this basically means is that, like, if there's a piece of code you don't understand what it's doing, Google it. And, like, to be fair to them, like, that is a big part of programming. You know, I've made games before. When you run into a roadblock and you know you're supposed to be able to do something and you can't figure out how to do it, you Google it. That's just what you do. That's programming. And there are programmers that have made entire careers on just skimming through a website like Stack Overflow or whatever they just find on Google. You know, it comes from Reddit, comes from all kinds of different places. What became a problem in this programming bootcamp course is that as I progressed through the classes, the pace became faster and faster and faster and faster. They taught us more things more quickly. And as things got faster, that meant the research portion got longer and larger and bigger and harder. You know, week 1 or 2, like I said, that Java portion of the course was like baby training wheels. You know, it was super easy. By week 13, the instructor was writing example code, and I did not understand 75% of what he was writing. And presumably, if I don't understand what the code is, then I'm supposed to Google it. That's research, right? Things they haven't necessarily taught us, but the information exists out there on the internet, so I have to teach myself. They only exist to teach the fundamentals. And I want to pause here and say that, like, obviously, if you're struggling in school, you talk to the teacher, right? That's kind of what teachers, or at least in part, that's what they're there for. And obviously, like, because, you know, I'm nervous and I'm shy and I'm everything else, I considered the teacher to be my last line of defense. Instead, I would go to my friends if I had problems with programming. Because I have, you know, a lot of friends who know programming. They do website development. They know JDBC. They know MySQL. They know a lot of different things. So I'd go to them first and treat the teacher as like this last line of defense. And the funny thing about that is that when I would go to my friends with these problems, be like, you know, what does this mean? How does this work? Here's what they taught me. Here's what they expect me to do. It would leave my friends scratching their heads too. A lot of this was just like, the lesson plan was just poorly written. You know, they would say, you know, here, make the code do this. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? What does this mean? Because it would be written so confusingly, and I'd go to friends and we'd spend like an hour just trying to decipher what was written in the lesson plan. And like, these are supposed to be like classes for adults with jobs, right? During orientation for school, they told us, you know, dedicate up to 2 hours a night. Some nights maybe 3 hours to get schoolwork done. Because, you know, they expect you to be at work for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. You probably have other obligations in your life. So just set aside a couple hours every night for school. Well, for me, even with getting help from my friends, I would often spend 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 hours a day, every day, for an entire week, even weekends, trying to get my programming classwork done. Even the easy stuff. And when I told my neurologist, when I visited with him in, I think it was like May or June, I think it was June, he said that I should tell the school that, I should say, hey, I'm in danger of slipping behind, I might need more time, etc., etc., etc. And I thought, I'll tough it out. Because at this point, I was struggling, but I wasn't behind. The problem there is that just going to the neurologist for 8 hours one day, and then meeting with the neurologist a few weeks later to get my results, again, for, it was 2-3 hours when we went over my results, I thought I could keep up. And those two days were just enough where I fell a little bit behind. And then when I fell a little bit behind, that became a little bit more behind. And a little bit more behind. And a little bit more behind. Until I was supposed to finish the course on September 9th. Was it September 9th? Somewhere around, it was first week of September. Maybe it was September 3rd. And when the due date for our final project came around, I was almost 6 weeks behind. A month and a half behind. And somewhere around the end of September, early October, they called me about this. They're like, hey, you were supposed to be done by now, kid. I was like, yeah, I know. So they laid it out for me. They said, okay, since you're so far behind, in order to finish our course, you need to complete 70% of the classes. And that makes sense, right? That's like a passing D grade or a passing C grade is 70% or better. And I remember I was actually on the phone with the guy. I logged into my dashboard and I checked, and I had completed 68% of the course. And they said, okay, you just need to do 70% or more. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was basically just do one more week. That would push me over to 74%. And then I could get my certificate of completion. I'd be done. It wouldn't be glamorous. It wouldn't be straight A's. It wouldn't be amazing. But I'd be done. I'd have a certificate of completion. So I did my one more week. And I contacted them about it. I was like, okay, I'm done. And then weeks passed, and weeks passed, and weeks passed. It was a month later that they finally called me back, and they were like, yeah, well, you're gonna have to finish the final project in order for us to give you your certificate of completion. And that's a problem, because the final project is writing a database app that has to talk to a website, get data out of the website, put it into the database, and then organize and structure the database. And to do that, I need to finish the last 4 or 5 weeks of school. I cannot just write an app with the entire last segment of school missing. And this phone call that I got, them telling me this, that I need to finish the final project, this was a week and a half ago. I was supposed to be done in September, and it's the middle of November. It's almost the end of November when I'm recording this. They moved the goalposts on me. So now I'm sitting here not even sure if I'm going to be able to finish this school. It's costing everyone money. I might have wasted my time. I still don't have a job. It sucks. It really sucks. I don't know what I'm going to do. YouTube is my only income, and I don't get a lot of income from YouTube these days. Because I've been doing school, I've been applying for jobs, I've been fighting not to sink back into this depression again because nothing is going right for me. Like I said, it's very easy to spiral. And it's hard for me even to make new videos. I mean, I've talked about it several times now that I have a Shadow Generations video that I've been struggling to get done for literally an entire year now. And thankfully, like, the real only bright spot in all of this, like, I say I'm struggling to put out this Shadow Generations video, but then we have the Yuka Replayly video. That was, like, a stroke of luck in many different aspects. And that's largely because I kept it short and easy to produce, right? The only problem is that I don't know if that's how I like to make videos. Like, my normal video reviews, obviously, and you know, if you've been paying attention to my channel over the long term, is that they've slowly been getting longer and longer and longer and longer. You know, my first video review ever, back in 2009, I think it was Sonic Unleashed, and like, that video is a trip to watch nowadays. That video is also like under 10 minutes. And then, you know, slowly that became, as YouTube grew and, you know, they removed limitations on video length, that became, you know, videos would be 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 15 minutes. And sometimes, like, that's a little bit weird. I remember the Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric video review. I think that video is maybe around 22 minutes long. But that's because the last 5 minutes are me rambling over the credits. And that was me being like, oh man, I can't do that ever again. I know I tend to be long-winded sometimes, but that was ridiculous. That video was only like maybe 17 minutes. Anyway, point is, my videos have been getting longer ever since, like, the video, How Do We Fix Sonic? That video was 30 minutes. And I killed myself on that video. I thought, never again, no more videos that long. And then my Sonic Mania, my first Sonic Mania video review, I think was 30 minutes. My second Sonic Mania video review was 30 minutes. My Sonic Frontiers video review, I think, was 45 minutes. And now I think this Shadow Generations video might be an hour. But that's because I'm talking about 2 games. Anyway, point is, my videos have been getting longer, and with the Yuka Replayly video, I had a very tight deadline, even tighter because I dragged my feet on some of it. If you don't know, there's a post about it over on Patreon, a text post, a free text post, anyone can read it, about how I got the key in early October, and I was struggling to figure out what to do with it, and I did a stream, and I was going to cut down the stream and put that on the main channel, and I ended up doing a video review in a little under 2 weeks, which for me is insane because all of these videos, How Do We Fix Sonic, Sonic Mania, Sonic Boom, Sonic Frontiers, Shadow Generations, have all been these projects that take me months and months and months and months and months and months to put together. Even the Sonic Unleashed video, the 10 tips for Sonic Unleashed, that took 2 months to put together, right? So I had this very tight deadline for the Yuka Replayly video. That's kind of hard to say sometimes. And I'm trying to hurry because people are going to be getting home soon, and I need to wrap this up. But I kept it short, I kept it simple, and it worked. You know, I got the video out quickly, but at the same time, I don't want my videos to always be simple like that. I enjoy putting more thought and more effort and more care into my videos, even if I think a lot of you out there probably don't notice the amount of work I put into my videos. How much care I put into where I put edits, where I put cuts, what footage I use. So I don't know if I necessarily want to just keep making simple videos like that, because it takes all the fun out of it. And if I'm not having fun, then why am I doing these videos, right? The Yuka Replayly video was like a minimum viable product for me, and I don't want to just put out minimum viable products. I want something I can be proud of. And if it's something I am proud of, then it's something I'm going to be slow at. But I don't make enough money to be slow. That's the catch in all of this. What I want to make me happy isn't possible right now. And it is quickly becoming less possible the longer it goes on. I can accept that I'm going to be slow, but can you accept that I'm going to be slow? Something a lot of you may not have known is that about 2 years ago, roughly, and maybe a year and a half ago, a friend of mine, Zaid Tabani, he actually offered me a job as a video editor for him. He had me edit part of a video as a test, and it turns out that's when I really came to terms with just how slow I am. His current editor could take a video from Zaid and turn it around into a video, put all the effects and the text and the images and everything into it in 2 hours. And when he had me do my application process to see if I would be a good fit to edit for his channel, that what normally takes his editor 2 hours was going to take me between 8 and 12 hours. And at the time, thinking about that, thinking about how slow I was and how I failed this job interview effectively, it killed me at the time. That I was somehow not talented enough, or that I was too lazy, or that I was a perfectionist. That maybe if I just worked harder, it wouldn't have been a problem. But, I've been saying this entire video, now I know better. I am slow for a reason, and it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to overcome that. It's just something I have to accept about myself. Like I said, I'm not lazy. I'm not dumb. I'm not untalented. I am proud of the work I put out into this world. I think I do good, right? I'm just dragging around this very, very heavy weight. You can't see it. You can't touch it. And it's not even something that I am personally consciously aware of. But it's there and it's slowing me down. So basically, throughout all of this, the only thing I have to say is that, you just gotta be patient with me. It would be nice if I could live like this, going at my own pace. Some people do. I just watched a TED Talk given by Kedikarus a few days ago, where, he puts out one video a month now, sometimes one video every 2 months, and he makes enough money to live off of that. That would be a dream for me. And there are things that I could be better about. The entire reason I'm doing this channel update video is because I recognize I don't talk to you guys enough. I don't give you a heads up on where I'm headed in terms of what videos are coming next on the channel, what I'm working on, what I'm interested in. So that's basically what this is. This is me being hey, here's your update. Maybe I'll try and do updates like this more frequently. Maybe they'll just be text posts on the community tab on YouTube and on Patreon. I don't know. I've also thought about starting up the podcast again, but again, nobody really seems to listen to that podcast, so. But then again, who knows? Maybe the 150 to 200 people that would click on that video, maybe those are good numbers. I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts anymore these days. Maybe that's normal. But in the spirit of keeping you up to date with what's coming up on the channel after all this bummer zone stuff, let's talk about what's actually where my head is at, what I'm thinking about in the future, right? Where am I going? And to preface this, none of this is set in stone. Since I tend to be so slow, it's hard to stick to a plan in the long term. Because, new things happen, new things crop up, plans change pretty dramatically, pretty quickly, pretty easily. That's just the nature of things. That's just how it goes. Case in point, the Euchre Playly video. I didn't expect to get that key that just kind of popped up out of nowhere, and I just had to jam it into my schedule, out of nowhere. And it sidelined a bunch of other stuff that I was working on at the time. But in the very short term, what I'm looking for next is two things. It's the Shadow Generations review. I need to get that out soon, before the end of the year, probably. I've been working on that for an entire year, doing voiceover and video capture and all this other stuff that's been in service of that. I have about around 70% of the video captured. I just need a little bit more. I need to finish recording the rest of Shadow Generations. I think I need to finish recording the remastered version of Sonic Generations. And then I might be done. I need to actually... I keep a text file with everything I need for a given video project. So I need to just like refer back to that. I also need to give the script a once-over for the second Strange Encounters podcast. The second and final part. That script is mostly, it's completed, it's ready to go. But there are a few things I want to get a little more detail on, let's say. There's one of the early stories in that podcast could use a little bit more of a rewrite. Because it's a little basic as it stands right now. So that's something that's coming next. That's probably going to be first on the docket before I get to the rest of Shadow Generations. Sorry, I'm just filling my coffee mug with water. I also need to get back to the definitive way to play Sonic Adventure 2, Part 2. I talked about this video last year, and it's still on my plate. I should probably go back over that script. It probably needs a pretty big rewrite at this point. I was actually informed, I don't know, like 2 or 3 months after I moved here to Colorado. One of the major mods in that video is something called, I think it's the Sonic Adventure 2 Render Fix by Shadatic. He informed me that, like, hey, you might want to hold off on the video because there's a major update coming to Render Fix. That's going to change a whole lot of what that mod does. And maybe that mod is out now, maybe it's not. I don't know. If I'm supposed to wait for that mod to come out first, I might be off the hook for the Sonic Adventure 2 video for now. But I should wait for that first. I've also wanted to go back and rewrite the Sonic Adventure 1 video, the definitive way to play that game. Because a lot of that modding scene has changed dramatically in the last 5 years. And like, it's actually kind of difficult for that one because a lot of those mods are in kind of a weird place. PKR, the one who made the Dreamcast conversion for that mod, or for that game, like, his website isn't really doing so hot these days. And he made the decision to move the mod off of ModDB at some point and only host it on his website. It actually makes the Dreamcast conversion kind of hard to get to nowadays. Kind of hard to install. I need to look into and research alternatives for that. Going into 2026, there's a new type of video I'm looking into doing. Obviously, I do game development. I've done it longer than I've done YouTube, in fact. And one of the things that I want to look into is possibly doing a video about a game development project of one of mine. We'll see how that pans out. That's going to be one of the biggest, most complex videos I've ever made, if I ever get around to it. The script is definitely one of the longest I've ever written, by necessity, because it goes into the history of a game development project. It goes into the inner workings of the game development project. But I watched, like, Rube's Simpsons Hit and Run remake video series. That was very fascinating. I was watching a video series about remaking Super Mario World in Godot. That was very interesting. And I have game development talents. I could go into what it's like for me to make a video game. What that looks like, all kinds of stuff, right? 2026 will also be the 30th anniversary. Is it the 30th? The 20th anniversary of registering. Yeah, no, okay, no. This is me reading off my script now. 2026 will be the 20th anniversary of registering this YouTube channel, and it will be the 30th anniversary of the Sega Saturn game Nights into Dreams. I have been teasing for many, many years the fact that I've written a Nights into Dreams documentary going into the development history of that game. And I never produced it because I figured it would be too difficult, too complicated, too much work. And that's true. That's all true. It's going to be a very difficult video to make, but if I'm going to put it out at any time, the 30th anniversary seems like a good time to do that. So that's probably also going to be a big video project for next year. And for the nice documentary, ideally, I'd like to buy footage for that game, right? Because you go to a website like Pond 5 or whatever else that has all this stock footage, I could make this feel like a real documentary. I could buy footage of conventions and airports and just a lot of stuff so that it's not just looking at still images or archival footage of old game trailers that isn't preserved very well, so that it would feel more, I guess, more cinematic in a certain term, and just being able to buy little snippets of incidental footage to slip in there to make it more visually interesting to watch would help a lot. But stock footage like that isn't always super cheap. I'd need another few $100s for that. And I don't have a few $100s to spare. I can barely pay my rent most months. But, if I'm sitting around looking for the perfect conditions for this documentary to happen to be produced, that's never going to happen. I just have to make do with what I have and hope that I do it to the best of my ability, because otherwise it'll just sit there gathering dust forever, basically. Beyond those, I don't really know. I've had someone in my Discord. He's been an on and off supporter over the years. He's a friend of mine. He's been threatening to buy me Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. I didn't buy it for myself. I can't afford it. I think he was waiting for a Black Friday sale. So I don't know if that's happening. He doesn't have to do it, and I think he knows he doesn't have to do it. I'd hope so. But that's possibly on the docket. Also, I think last year I mentioned I thought about doing videos on Sonic Origins Plus, Sonic Superstars, Sonic Colors Ultimate Edition. If you guys really want videos like that, I'll still do them. I can write about Sonic the Hedgehog as easily as water flows down a mountain, right? It's pretty easy for me to write Sonic videos. I just don't know how much current interest there is in those kind of things. So, leave a comment, whatever. Oh, there's one more thing. Here and there, different blog posts and Discord over the years, I've mentioned that, I was working on a Sonic Forces video that wasn't really about Sonic Forces anymore. Over on Patreon, I actually ended up publishing that. Not the video. I'm kind of washing my hands of the video for now. I published the script, what was done on it. And that's because this project, this Sonic Forces video that wasn't really about Sonic Forces anymore, kind of became something too big for me to deal with. It was it turned out to be a gigantic challenge to wrangle all of the thoughts, because it ended up kind of turning into a sequel to my How Do We Fix Sonic video, right? It was going to be sort of a part 2 of that almost. And the script was I think the final version of the script that never got finished ended up being 23 pages long, which, for reference, most of my scripts like a 30-minute script is like 15 pages long, right? So for it to be 22, maybe 23 pages, this would have been easily more than an hour long. And it would have been, I mean, I talk about the Knights video being complex. I talk about how long this Shadow Generations video review is going to be. This video would have killed me. Like, straight up. It would have needed so much work. It would have been so insane to do that video that I figured, like, I spent 9 years working on some version of that video, because it technically started before Sonic Forces even came out. And like I said, like, just figuring out how everything fits together was a journey into itself. And the document I published on Patreon was 60 pages. Because it goes through every iteration this script was over the last 9 years. And what I want to do, I don't want this to just live on Patreon, because you have to pay for it on Patreon. And obviously I have YouTube memberships now. So what I want to do is try and take that document and figure out how to reconfigure it into a podcast that I can put on YouTube for YouTube Premium subscribers. Right? And it's probably going to take a format sort of like my very early access podcasts, where it's me, like, sort of setting up things, and then, like, the meat and potatoes of what's being read out is like a text-to-speech voice. Because, you know, I'm 60 pages, that's going to be like a 3-hour podcast. I don't think I can do that. Because recording voiceover isn't just like this. It's not just talking off the cuff for me. When I'm actually reading from a script, there's a lot of editing that goes into that. There's a lot of, like, editing out breaths, editing out flubs. Like, for a 30-minute video, if I'm reading off of a script, the raw voiceover for that script will be at least an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. And I have to cut 2 hours down so that it fits 30 minutes. If I had to do that with this unfinished Sonic Forces video script, we're talking 12 hours of audio that I'd need to cut down to be 2 or 3. And that's not happening. That's not happening. I need to find a better way to squish 60 pages down so that it's listenable as a podcast without it taking me the rest of my life to put together. Right? But yeah, those are all the plans I have for the channel currently. You know, obviously, I have a whole huge Google Doc of all kinds of other ideas swirling around in my head. And, like, specifically, I mentioned last year I was going to do, like, a tier list video for all the Sonic games. Because, again, like, I thought all you guys want me to do is talk about Sonic games. And, you know, the Yooka-Replay video ended up not being a total failure, so I think I have a little more wiggle room than I thought. But I figured I was just going to talk about every Sonic game ever made. And that's still on my mind a little bit. It's not an active project, but it is something I think about occasionally. That could still happen. That could still come in the future. And that might actually be, like, the secret weapon I have to making shorter, easier videos, too. As long as I, like, structure them properly and make sure they stay compact and simple and easy to put together, that might actually work. But that's not something I'm necessarily thinking about currently. Again, I'm trying to get the Shadow Generations video out. I'm trying to get the second Strange Encounters podcast out. Definitive way to play Sonic Adventure 2. redoing the definitive way to play Sonic Adventure 1, the Knights documentary, game development video. I was also thinking of doing like a channel history video that goes through starting the YouTube channel, why I wanted to do a YouTube channel. Because LGR did one last year, and like that's what got me to like counting up my own years. And I think I wrote an outline for a channel history video last year, because that would have been 15 years since I started taking my channel seriously. But then I realized, like, if I just waited like a year and a half, then that would be the 20th anniversary of my channel entirely, and that's going to be, 2026. So maybe you'll get a channel history video out of me next year. I don't know. Like I said, the Knights documentary, this Sonic Forces video that's not really about Sonic Forces. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's called Sonic the Hedgehog and the Fear of Speed. Like I said, it was going to be part 2 to How Do We Fix Sonic? And that should be out sometime next year. But that's where my head's at. For better or worse. And again, I need your patience in all of this. I need your support in all of this. I need to be able to pay my rent, right? But, obviously, we all are where we are, if that makes any sense. If you don't have it, if you don't have the money, I don't have the money, none of us have the money. But if you do have the money, think about giving some of it to me, so that I don't piss my roommate off any more than I already have. Anyway, that's the channel update video, folks. I'll see you when I see you. Whatever that is. Bye.